Stand-up comedy is the personification of science.
Thank you. Good night. My name is Harold Bay.
Hello, my name is Dr. Harold Bays, Medical Director and President of the Louisville Metabolic and Atherosclerosis Research Center located in Louisville, Kentucky. Welcome to this series of YouTube videos entitled The Science of Stand-Up. This particular YouTube video will be covering definitions, Part 2. So this is a follow-up to definitions, Part 1. This entire series of YouTube videos examines the integration of many different types of sciences as they apply and as they are applicable to the science of stand-up. This particular YouTube video will be examining literary devices or literary sciences. I want to review some of the definitions that we covered in Part 1. There's the observational comedy triad. That's where you have the setup and the punchline, and then you act out the bit. Then there's the premise with detailed explanation. That's where sometimes the description of the bit goes to an extreme, and it is through the extreme description that creates the funny. We talked about imitations or impressions or dialects, how they can be effective in a comedy routine. We also talked about tags or throwaway lines or the callback. And all of those things may generate the thing, and the thing being the shtick. The next term is breaking the fourth wall. As you know, in a play, actors in a play, there will be 3 walls behind them, 2 on the side, 1 in the back. And if the actor chooses to engage the audience, then that's called breaking the fourth wall, the wall being that imaginary wall between the performer and the audience. And many times there are comics that do speak to the audience, okay, not just at the audience, but to the audience, and they're breaking the fourth wall. There are a couple of terms I'd like to introduce only because I could not find them in standard literary devices. One would be inopinatus, technica. Inopinatus, technica. Inopinatus meaning surprising and technica being technical. And this is where there's this unexpected use of technical terms. Dennis Miller would be a comic who uses many technical terms or citations in his stand-up comedy routine. And that can be very effective. Then there's also polycontinuoverbism. Polycontinuoverbism. And that's where you have these run-on sentences, these breathless rants. And it ends up being funny, not just because of the content, but because of the device. And we're going to be talking about 50 literary devices. And the reason we're doing that is because if you're trying to have a better understanding about comedy, or if you are a stand-up comic and you want to expand the techniques that you're using, I think understanding these 50 literary devices can be helpful. Certainly it's helpful to be able to identify them. But in any case, this term here I've not really seen in the standard literary devices, so I wanted to go ahead and cover that now. Polycontinuoverbism. And as I said, it's funny, not just because of the content, but also because it's funny as a device. And one of the reasons that it's so funny is people are just fascinated about how can a person remember all that stuff? How can they remember to say all those things in succession without reading it? And it's sort of like appreciation of magic. You know, people just wonder, how can you do this? The comics that have used polycontinuoverbism would be George Carlin, Dennis Miller. There's also a specific bit I would encourage you to find. It's audio, I believe, on the internet. Gilbert Gottfried, Land of the Three Named People. I would challenge you to go seek that out. Land of the Three Named People by Gilbert Gottfried. I just think it's brilliant. Just brilliant in the material itself, its innovation, but also in its polycontinuoverbism. Now you could say, well, this polycontinuoverbism is just a form of diction, and maybe that's true, but I think this is so distinctly different that it's worth mentioning here. So now we're going to be talking about 50 literary devices, the science of stand-up, integrated with the science of literature. And I will be doing them in alphabetical order because I just have to. Allegory, real-life content that delivers abstract ideas. Alliteration, repeated words in succession with same letter or sound. Allusion, passing reference to a person or thing. Anachronism, error in attributing events to a different era. Anaphora, repeated use of a word or phrase. The good news is, because I'm sitting down and because I'm in my office, not in a club, I had no problems with traffic. Because, I got to tell you, prior to this COVID-19 thing, I was traveling 1 to 3 times a week and dealt a lot with taxis, for example. And yes, I've ridden the Lyfts and the Ubers and such, but I love the New York cabbies. Okay, New York taxi drivers, just love them. You get in a New York taxi, and it's like a thrill ride. They're whipping in and out of traffic, honking on the horn, rolling down their windows, yelling at people, driving on the curb and whatever. But the thing about these taxi drivers from New York, they will get you to where you need to be. I'll fly into LaGuardia, and then a New York taxi driver will have me to my hotel in Manhattan, like in 58 minutes. It's remarkable, okay, because they know what they're doing. Like I said, they're whipping around, honking the horn, yelling at people and all this kind of stuff. 58 minutes tops. If I took a Uber or a Lyft, it would take at least an hour. So love the New York taxi drivers. This particular routine that I'm about ready to talk about, I'm going to be talking about lifestyle. I'm going to be talking about nutrition and physical activity. It's part of what I do. And the reason I'm going to do this is because too many times I find that people gravitate away from the serene sanctity of science. Instead, they seem to gravitate towards the direction of Dunkin' Donuts and the culture of Krispy Kreme. And that's what I think we can get away from. Okay, I think people are going to be better off getting away from those types of things. I talk a lot to people that are very focused upon carbohydrate restriction. Hey, I'm a diabetologist. I work with people with high triglyceride levels, certainly patients with obesity. So low carb, I'm all in with the low carb. It's just that sometimes folks that are engaged in low carb diets, I'm not sure they're always consistent with a patient-centered approach. I was given a program once where I showed a picture of a bowl of oatmeal with blackberries in one picture, and in the other picture I showed a picture of a sausage and gravy big breakfast. And obviously one had some carbohydrates and the other had a bunch of saturated fats and a lot of calories and everything. And I asked them which they felt was more healthful. And many of their minds sort of exploded there. They had a trickle of blood that started coming from their ears. And so, look, I think sometimes we just have to accept the reality and come down based upon the science. There are times when, even though it's maybe got some carbs in it, there may be healthier meals compared to high saturated fat meals. That's, again, patient-centered approach. And I'm no surgeon general, but I just think that these fad diets and these extreme diets are things that we should avoid. I don't think, for example, that magnetic rings reduce appetite. Okay? I've just not seen the convincing science that that's true. I don't think stapling your ear reduces appetite. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe I haven't read up on the literature as much as I should, but I'm not sure that that's true. Other types of diets and such that, again, I'm not sure fall within the scientific domain would be the air diet or the blue plate diet or the cotton ball diet. Not so sure about the cotton ball diet. Not sure I know what the cotton ball diet is. The marshmallow diet, no. Don't think marshmallow diet would be considered a nutritious, science, evidence-based diet. And then, of course, there's the tapeworm diet, and I'm really not going to discuss that, okay? All right. So you wonder then, why do people come up with these types of things? I think there's, again, a gravitation towards many people who almost reach the stage of zealotry where they say the only data that really matters is the unpublished data. So there can be all kinds of published data out there, but that gets kind of skipped over. Instead, many times you'll find these folks that'll look at this unpublished data that they've heard about and say that's the real data that you need to look at, and everything else is just part of the conspiracy. I would be cautious about that. Okay, I would be cautious about looking at unpublished data as the scientific foundation for the kind of advice you're going to give to your patients. Then you hear things about, the paleo diet. The thing with the paleo diet is, that was the age of Neanderthals, and 80% of the Neanderthals died before age 40. And you might say, yeah, well, when their diet, it's just they were under a lot of stress, and they had a lot of trauma. And maybe that's true. I mean, I don't know. How stressful could it have been 100,000 years ago? I understand maybe they were competing with humans, and maybe humans were really annoying and stressed them out. And that's what caused the extinction of the Neanderthals is, again, very annoying and competitive humans. Maybe that's true. Maybe they're always showing up, the Neanderthals and whatever. The other thing I don't quite understand is, how did chocolate get to be in a paleo diet? Nothing brings back the nostalgia of the Stone Age than a bag of M&Ms and Reese Cups and Snickers and Hershey's Kisses and such. Not so sure. Not so sure. All right. So I think a good bit of advice for folks would be avoid the panderers, avoid the people that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Things like you can eat what you want, where you want, how you want, as much of you want, and you can still lose weight. Okay, and anything less than that, it's the conspiracy. It's the conspiracy, folks. Just this has to stop. This has to stop. I mean, there are some basic nutritional rules that we know to be true. So I know it's sometimes you want to hear the other things, but I think knowing the science is helpful as well. And one of the things that I think we could do a better job is to start being more upfront with patients about nutrition, because sometimes we say things and it's not entirely true. For example, mountain oysters, not oysters. Okay, mountain oysters are not oysters. They are bull testicles. Okay, vanilla flavoring. I mean, you might think that comes from a plant, but it comes from the anal glands of beavers, which I could have gone a lifetime without knowing that. And head cheese. Head cheese is not cheese. Doesn't have anything to do with cheese. Okay, it's not dairy. It's nothing. So it is head cheese. Head cheese is from the head of a pig. Not sure how we got to the cheese part, but it includes the tongue and the gelatinous collagen from boiling the pig's head. Now the good news is they usually remove the brain and the eyes, so I'll give you that. Okay, but it's not cheese. Okay, so that you just got to stop. It's not what it is. Okay, and for those of you who've not heard of head cheese, I'd challenge you to go to your grocery store and look in the luncheon meat section and look at this substance they call souse. Okay, what exactly is souse? And if you look at the ingredients, it'll say it's made from tongues and ears and feet and the gelatinous collagen produced from boiling pig bones, right? So I know some people that don't know this will look at souse and they'll go, is that the vegan? No, it is not vegan. And how do we know this? Because souse is made from pig parts. That's how we know it, okay? So this has got to stop. It's got to stop. Look, the truth is not always pretty. But it has to be said. It has to be said. Anastrophe, reversal of figure of speech. Anthropomorphism, non-human animal given human-like qualities. Aphorism, concise statement of wisdom. Archetype, origin of what has become a symbol. Chiasmus, inversion of the same phrase. So how did I become so passionate about nutrition? Well, it's not like I had a mentor or anything. It's not like I routinely met with Yoda from the planet Dagobah. The best medicine, prevention is. No. And my passion for nutrition was not lifelong, mainly because of ignorance on my part. In my younger years, I started work when I was 14. I was a busboy, dishwasher, setup man, cook. And my dietary meal plan was often bits of burnt steak that were exposed to a heat lamp for about 4 hours. And then surrounding that would be these salted substances that I think at one time were French fries. I'm still not quite sure. And then once I was no longer a cook and I worked at Food Mart, the food stuff there was really not that much more healthful. We used to have these hamburger bread and meat-like substances that were placed in this plastic. Okay, it was frozen in this surrounding plastic, and we would put it, this synthetic preparation, we would put it in this heat oven, and then this portable heat oven would generate this toxic fog within the plastic surrounding the meat and bread substance, and then the heat oven bell would go off, and then you would open up the plastic. And the reason you'd want to do that is because you could get to the food, but it was also good because you could release all that smoky polycyclic carcinogens into the air. So that was good. Because, I don't think you could really consider this synthetic meat and bread-like substance as nutritious until you release the, the cancer-promoting smoky aromatic hydrocarbons. Once you got rid of those things, I think you were good to go. But the good news is, over time, I learned more about nutrition, which is why I'm an advocate for nutrition. But again, back in the day, I didn't even know you had to be a scientist or know anything about biology or know anything about chemistry to be even a physician. When I worked in the restaurant work, I would be asked by the guys in the dish room who wash the dishes. They'd say, what are you going to do with all that science you're learning in college? I'm like, don't know yet. Might be a doctor. And they said, how many years of trade school do you have to go to be a doctor? And I'm like, I don't know. So I had to go to my faculty advisor to get the lowdown on how to enter into a pre-med program. But ultimately, went ahead and got accepted to medical school after college. And when I moved to Louisville, Kentucky and started medical school, I moved into a $125 a month apartment, had no heat, no air conditioning. It was just a room attached to a bathroom. It was a boarding house. Okay, it was a boarding house. And downstairs, we had one universal phone. It was rotary. This was back before cell phones. I had one universal kitchen for everybody. And one universal bipolar house cat, which that was very interesting. Ultimately, I was able to move out of this boarding house, and I moved into a carriage house, which it was already furnished with mice and cockroaches. And when I say cockroaches, I don't mean like regular cockroaches. I mean like Chernobyl nuclear reactor cockroaches, the ones that when you try to hit them with a shoe, they would look back at you like, what are you doing? You're going to hit me with a shoe? I'm a cockroach. Like my life ain't bad enough already? Now you're going to hit me with a shoe? Thank you very much. But I would still hit him with the shoe because I didn't like big cockroaches. One of the reasons why I was navigating through these humble abodes is because I was not aware of this big lie. When I first got into medical school, I was told, oh, you can always borrow money. When that proved not to be true. I could not borrow sufficient money to live in a reasonable apartment and such. So that's the reason I lived where I did. I considered donating my time and try to make some extra cash on the side. There were some women that did this when I did my gynecological rotations in medical school. And they would volunteer to have medical students perform pelvic exams on them. I mean, what a great thing to do to advance medical science and to help patients and such. I got to tell you, I just don't think I would be that committed. I mean, even as desperate as I was for money, I mean, if they had sort of an opportunity to make a little cash by having people do prostate exams on me, I'm not sure I would do that. Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, I'd probably call. I'm like, excuse me, I'm calling about that making some money, having people do prostate exam. What's involved there? Like, oh, really? Oh, and how many medical students are there? 10? Oh, okay. And they do what? They use gloves. Well, yes. Of course they would use gloves. I mean, now that you say it, it's kind of obvious and everything, safety first. But I guess I had just not thought about it that much, I guess is what I'm saying here. I do have one final question. So after these 10 medical students all do their prostate exams on me, will they send me flowers when they're done the next day? Maybe. So look, I was never under any kind of illusions. It wasn't like Mr. Wizard was going to wave his magic wand and make it all better. It wasn't like Lucky the Leprechaun was going to suddenly appear there at the end of the rainbow. This beardish, this bearded Irish man with a top hat was going to magically say, here's your pot of gold, pink hearts, yellow moon, green clovers. No, that wasn't going to happen. So I just had to accept my situation. It's like, it's tough, but look, it's been tough for a lot of people. In 1972, I remember the Food and Research and Action Center, I think, was talking about school lunches. And they came up with a statement. You can find this on the internet. Their report started with this statement. If we had ham, we would have ham and eggs. If we had eggs. I thought that was pretty profound. If we had ham, we could have ham and eggs if we had eggs. Colloquialism, common phrases in certain locales. Cumulative sentences, core statement followed by independent segmented phrases. Diction, distinctive vocabulary and style of expression. Dramatic irony, the audience knows something, the characters do not. Euphemism, colorful or pleasant ways to describe something unpleasant. Okay, so when I first started medical school, I can't say that I easily fit in, being from Southern Kentucky. Many of the other medical students were from larger cities than where I came from. And I remember first walking in and saying, hey, how you girls doing? And they were not particularly pleased with with how I phrased my question. They said, how would you feel if we asked you how you boys are doing? I'd like, well, us boys are doing fine, as far as I know. No. So look, again, I think I quickly recognized there was certain phrases and such that probably best not use in Louisville, Kentucky. Things like if we encountered somebody that really wanted to make a lot of sense, we might say, if that boy had an idea, he'd die of loneliness. His cornbread ain't done in the middle. And then there's another one, expression that we use in the South, things like, well, that'd ruin your whole day. And what you do When you apply that, it's like describe some horrible thing. And then as an understatement, you would say, well, that would just ruin your whole day. Give me an example like, I read where an asteroid is headed for the Earth and might extinguish life as we know it. Well, I hope we don't have another Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, because, that'd ruin your whole day. See where it goes on there? It's just a understated tag at the end. Other terms I learned I couldn't really use in medical school, like there were different types of measuring systems. In the South, there are at least 4 sizes: small, medium, large, and big O. I'm here to buy a truck. What kind of truck you want? I want a big O truck. Okay, so big O would be the next size above that of large. Okay, big O. Another word that I learned these folks didn't really understand was used to could. Used to could is a prior ability. You could hear where I come from. People say, well, back when I was younger, I could dunk a tetherball right there through a basketball hoop, and I'd get subcutaneous hemorrhages. They're right on the plantar surface there of my digits. Okay, right there on the palmar surface of my digits, they would get all subcutaneous hemorrhages and such where my hand would hit the rim. And I can't do that now, but I used to could. And again, it's just, people just have different phrases and such. And I just had to learn how to adapt. So, look, in short, I'm proud of being where I'm from. I'm not ashamed of it and whatever, but I do find that many times people from the Northeast and West Coast really don't understand folks like me. That's kind of helped me in some ways, because I've served on scientific advisory panels where they will have a diversity panel. Okay, it's a panel dedicated to diversity, and they will have a woman, African American, Hispanic, Asian, and me. I would be the token South guy. Okay, again, why is that? Because many times, if you're from the South, people think you're unintelligent, uninformed, different race, should be studied in cages. And if it were left up to the academics of the Northeast and West Coast, we'd be separated from society like they do those smokers in the airport, which is just total sadness. You're there at the airport, and behind that glass window and one of the rooms are all the smokers, and they're kind of looking out, very sad, and an occasional kid would want to run up to the window, and the parents will grab them. Don't feed the smokers. Like, oh my gosh, it's like being caged in a zoo. I don't know any other solution, but still kind of sad. So again, I want to make it clear that I can adapt my dialect. So I can speak like where I'm from, but I don't have to. When I give scientific presentations, I may still have a little bit of an accent, but it's not pronounced. But at least I say something. At least I have a message. At least I can make a point, okay? And this would be as opposed to people, and I don't care where you're from, whether you're from the Northeast, the West Coast, or whatever. There's some folks that can talk a whole lot more than me, and they have absolutely nothing to say, okay? Like marketing folks. Again, not meaning to be critical, but sometimes I wonder if a lot of marketing people don't really prepare for whatever presentation they're about ready to give, and they just go into that buzzword mode where they can just go on and on and on and talk for a long time, and when they get done, it's like cotton candy. It's like it all just sort of melts away, and you're like, they didn't say anything of substance. There was no nutritional value to what they just said. And you wonder if they're taught that way or if they're just born that way. Ours is not a corporate culture of simple acquisitive aggregation of vacuous market segmentation. Instead, our corporate ecosystem is a global and holistic one based upon accountability management and authenticity in our customer-centric commitment to best practices. Our pipeline is guided by innovation, evidence-based content, quality, and value. Our best-in-class branding begins with integrity and compliance consistent with our core competencies. Our commercialization action items harness our uber hierarchical resources towards the goal task of consumer alignment and demand creation. Through content delivery platforms, geo-targeting storytelling, leveraged optics, and empowerment processing, we generate universal yet personalized content. This is reflective in our translation of accountability metrics, content performance, and key performance indicators. In fact, the very foundation of the conceptual moniker of our corporate identity is built upon our engagement in market visualization, tactilization, and vocalization, which all culminate in social activation and social actualization. Our collective dexterity in exploiting this primordial native advertising is achieved not by creatolytics, but rather by data-driven real-time analytics. In short, our marketing dashboard is multi-level, integrated, and contextualized to upskill expertise for a cross-functional team. Because it's only through originative modeling to address unmet needs that we target and engaged relevant stakeholders active in this space. This includes our B2B collaborators, venture capitalists, stockholders, shared decision-making partners, and most of all, our customers, who through our shared journey have every expectation that we will just not survive, but succeed. So as I said, I'm fine being where I'm from, being from Southern Kentucky. And while I probably could have done better with my nutrition in my younger years, I've always been pretty good about physical activity, whether it be basketball, tennis, some other sports and such. Used to play them quite frequently after we got off work. When I was a cook, we would go down to the local Eastwood Baptist Church, and it would be 11 o'clock at night. It'd be the black boys and the white boys, and we'd all be wearing we'd have no shirts, but we'd be wearing our blue work pants and our white socks and black work shoes, and our bodies would be, glistening in the moonlight there, with that sweat going and everything. And we just played basketball all night long. And one day, we went out to go play basketball like we'd done countless times before. And Eastwood Baptist Church, they tore down the goal, and we couldn't believe it. And so somebody got a hold of one of the church members and asked them, why did you tear down the goal? And they said, well, there were reports that there were rednecks out there, these rednecks out there at night playing the basketball and everything. We said, that's why you can't trust people. You can't trust what people are telling you, even churches, because, we were out there every night and we never saw any rednecks. Okay, so, it's sad, but you have to accept reality. Here's just another example of how it's a little bit different being in the South. I was at the Louisville airport, and there was the Future Farmers of America convention, and I was reading a T-shirt on one of these attendees at the Future Farmers of America, and on one of the T-shirts said the following phrase: "All God's creatures are precious, especially when they're next to my eggs." And then there would be a picture on the T-shirt with this plate of breakfast where there would be eggs, and then there would be some sort of meat right next to it. And again, above that would be the text, and the text would be, "All God's creatures are precious, especially when they're next to my eggs." So just, folks, if you're not from the South, you're not from the country, everything is just different way of looking at things, I guess. But I think the overall point is whether it be adequate nutrition or physical activity or these types of things, what exactly are we trying to accomplish here? And I think overall we're trying to stay healthy, right? We're trying to be healthy beings and everything for not just us, but our family and our friends and such. I mean, I know we're not going to live forever, but look, there should be no rush to achieve room temperature. You know what I mean? We don't need to be rushing to sleep with the fishes or join the choir invisible. Okay, these are not objectives we need to be rushing into. Instead, I think sometimes you could just make some basic nutrition and physical activity changes, and boy, you can do that, and you might be finer than a frog's hair cut 4 ways. Exposition, providing background information. Flashback, past events relevant to the current story. Foreshadowing, early event that hints at something in the future. Frame story, something that provides an overview of inclusive, smaller stories. Hyperbole, exaggerated statement. So after I completed my medical training, I became active in various medical societies and became a part of leadership, like board of directors and that sort of thing. Love the people, love the mission, hate the politics. Hate the politics. Look, I live in a world of intentional naivete. I'm active in a lot of things. So are a lot of other people. And the only way I can make it work is I've got to be able to trust other people, but that can sometimes prove to be dangerous. Here's a tip. If you're entering into the leadership in academia, if anybody ever calls you on the phone and says, I would like to speak to you as a friend. I would like to speak to you as a friend. Hang up the phone immediately. Okay? Hang it up now. Okay? Please. I'm just giving you, I think, reasonable advice. Just hang up the phone. Hang it up. Because, oh my gosh, the remainder of that conversation is never good. It's never good. It's like, I want to speak to you as a friend. And what's that? What do I have in my hand? Well, it's a knife. I mean, why are you asking? What? You think I'm going to stab you in the back again? What? No. I would never do that. I would never. No. What are you thinking? That I'm holding this knife so I would stab you in the back again and kick your corpse into a shallow grave and spit on your maggot-infested, rotting face? Is that what you think I'd be doing? I mean, that's just so crazy that you would think that, because I'm really only wanting to call you as a friend. The good news is, though, as I've advanced in leadership of these medical societies, I've learned that there are a lot of people that started out like me, didn't know all that much about nutrition and such. I was asked to give a presentation at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland. And I got invited by the university there, and, they put me up at the hotel they put me up was the beautiful downtown Days Inn, which is very nice. And when I got there, they said, we got good news and bad news. I'm like, well, what's the good news? And they said, we got a room. And I said, well, what's the bad news? They said, well, the only room we have left is in the kennel. I'm like, what's the kennel? I said, well, that's where they keep the pets, but that's the only room we have left. So you're going to have to sleep in the area of the hotel where we keep the pets. So I went to the kennel, got in my room, and it ended up being okay. I mean, it's fine. It's just a hotel room. And I caught, well, except with the barking and the hissing and such. But other than that, it was just like any other type of room. And I remember at the end, I was ordering room service, and I'd already ordered my food, and I was trying to decide on a dessert. And the choices were apple pie, chocolate cake, and carrot cake. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but sometimes I have found that I will think something, and then I will say what I'm thinking, when in fact, in retrospect, that was a bad plan. Okay, never should have said what I was thinking, but but I did. I said, I'm looking at your menu here, and you got apple pie, and you got chocolate cake, and you got carrot cake, and man, I can't tell which of those would be healthier. And the woman on the phone says, oh, well, you got to go with carrot cake. And yet again, rather than just being quiet and just think of what I was thinking, I did go ahead and ask her, why do you think a carrot cake would be more healthful? And she said, because carrot is a vegetable. So I'm not the only one who has challenges with regard to nutritional knowledge. I'll give you another example. I was in Jacksonville, Florida at this, it was supposedly a 4 to 5 star hotel, but it had no room service. It had a 1-800 number, which I found to be very odd. And so I was going to, order pizza, like cheese, okay? But I'm ordering a pizza, and I'm talking to this person on the phone. Look, this person, probably just a teenager trying to work and do the best she could and such and everything. So I'm not meant to put anybody down, but I'm ordering this pizza there in Jacksonville, Florida, and I said, yeah, I'd like to order a pizza. One half, I'd like to have green peppers, and on the other half, I'd like to have pineapple. And she said, which half would you like to have the pineapples? I said, you mean like the left or the right? And that's probably exactly what she meant, because she was probably looking at a computer screen, right? And she's trying to decide whether to put the green peppers on the right and the pineapples on the other side. But if you think about it, that really doesn't make much sense. So I said to her, I could have just been nice about it and just answered the question, but instead I said, well, I think I'd rather be a little nebulous about which side I would like my green pepper and which side I would like my pineapple, because in the event that the pizza was delivered and they were on the wrong side, well, I'd have to send it back. And then this would create a moral dilemma for the driver, because the driver would be tempted to then just simply take the pizza and turn the box around. And then I would know, and again, that would result in a moral dilemma for both of us. So no, I don't think we should be specific about which side I would like my pineapples or my green peppers. So what does it all mean? What it means is, look, I think we all got to understand our limitations, our own intrinsic biases and prejudices. And certainly I'm no better than anybody else. Some things pop up sometimes and I don't know where they come from. I was walking, I try to walk at least once or twice a day around my building, in the building area, around our research site. And on the way that I walk, there is this entryway into a strip mall where they have all these different shops and places and such. And as I was walking across the road where you would pull into the strip mall, this woman almost runs me down. Okay, she wasn't paying a bit of attention. I think she was both talking to her friend beside her and she was on her cell phone. And she was driving a white convertible Mercedes-Benz. White convertible Mercedes-Benz, not paying a bit of attention where she's going, talking to her friend on a cell phone. And she almost just runs me over. My life was flashing in front of my eyes. I had to leap out of the way, and as I looked back at this woman, her hair was blonde. And I found myself, my reaction was, after I no longer saw my life before my eyes, my reaction was typical. And I felt terrible. I felt just awful. Why would I think it would be typical for a blonde girl to be driving a white Mercedes convertible and almost run me over? That's an intrinsic bias, and that's a real problem. And I felt really bad and almost felt like I should go apologize to her. And I kind of looked back, and my head was down. I was so ashamed. And I looked back, and what would I find would be the place that she pulled in with her white convertible Mercedes-Benz. Where where would she be pulling her car in other than Suntan City? I don't know why, and I can't explain it, but somehow I felt a little better after that. It still doesn't make it right, okay, but I did feel a little better. Okay, so what's the point? The point is, I got to be the most flawed human being ever, folks. Again, I'm no better than anybody else. I got faults. I got biases. I got intrinsic things that I don't even know exist there until they just pop out. Hypophora. Question followed by immediate answer. Imagery. Detailed descriptive language, appealing to the senses. Irony. Events or phrase involving an unexpected contrast. Isocolon. Series of grammatically equal short phrases. Juxtaposition. Side-by-side comparison to contrast differences. So given my acknowledged flaws, okay, for which I try to work on every day, try to be a better person today than I was yesterday, okay? Do I regret going into clinical research and belonging to medical organizations? No, because look, I think I can better relate to our patients, because many of our patients, they also have flaws. And as I mentioned before, a lot of times the flaws they have, not their fault. They get mixed messages with regard to nutrition, and I think sometimes they just go, forget about it. You people can't even decide on what's right or wrong. So what chance do I have? And then they will take it to an extreme where it's almost like they're poking us in the eye. Perfect example would be supper at the fair. So here are some items of supper at the fair that I think most of our patients probably know are unhealthful, but they will eat them. Again, I think it's almost like defiance. Okay, it's almost like protest. Things like deep fried ice cream cheeseburger. Now, I think if you were to ask most patients to say, is that a healthful supper? I think most would say it's probably not. How about deep fried Spam and cheese nuggets with ranch sauce? Or deep fried picnic on a stick. I don't know if you know what that is. That's a chicken, tater tots, and of course it's got a pickle. So, the good news there is the pickle, being nutritious, sort of minuses out the chicken and the tater tots there. Deep fried chicken skin. Deep fried frito pie. For those of you who don't know, that's frito corn chips, chili con carne, cheese, and yet again, you want to add that onion there to kind of balance that other stuff out. Deep fried butter. Can you think of any more blatant way to just stick your finger in the eye of physicians like us, or like me, or dietitians, or whatever? A lot of times this deep fried butter will be accompanied by powdered sugar and chocolate. Deep fried cookie dough, deep fried Mars bars, deep fried cheesecake, deep fried bubble gum, jelly beans, and sugar cubes. Who thinks of this stuff? Who thinks of this stuff? And then finally, just as the topper, deep fried peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So all of this is only to emphasize a basic point, and that is patients are not going to change, people are not going to change until they're ready to change, right? Until they make that commitment. And until they make that commitment to be consistent, okay? Be consistent in their beliefs and in their actions. I saw a guy at a gas station the other day. Goes into the little store there, and he comes out of the gas station while his car's filling up with gas, and he emerges with a carton of cigarettes, 2 6-packs of beer, and a Slim Jim. Then he starts up his 1970 Fairlane where this bluish gray black smoke just starts pouring out of his exhaust pipe and whatever. And what is it that I would see on his bumper? I would see a sign, a sticker that proudly proclaimed that he was pro-life. Okay, pro-life. Now, it really didn't actually matter what the sticker said, whether it be pro-life or pro-choice. My point is, So I think if there was just a way that we could get to patients and people in general and give them simple, basic messages that are just very short and sweet and say, yes, folks, this is what the science supports. These are the things that you should be doing, and throw all that other stuff away until you do these things. Things like prioritize vegetables, prioritize fruits, prioritize soluble fibers, prioritize legumes, nuts, whole grains, fish, prioritize foods rich in mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, limit saturated fats, limit salt, avoid processed foods, avoid energy-dense foods, avoid sugar-sweetened beverages. And folks, if people would just do those things, we'd go a long way towards having people lead more healthful lives. Because the bottom line is this. It's just like I talked about before. If you had a choice between oatmeal with blackberries, or if you had and so that's option A, okay, oatmeal with blackberries. And option B is a fast food breakfast of sausage, biscuit, gravy, constituting over 1,000 calories and over 5 grams of sodium. If you go ahead and choose B instead of A, it is likely you're doing so, not because you think it's more nutritious, it's because you haven't made that decision yet that you're wanting to make that change. And I mean, I think that's critical. And that's the reason we as healthcare providers need to have our patients understand that we do have behavioral modification techniques that we can employ to help them make more healthful eating choices. Litotes, double negative. Malapropism, mistaken use of similar sounding words. Metaphor, phrase that includes analogous, dissimilar things used to describe or contrast. Metonymy, use of symbolic words to substitute for a concept or another thing. Mood, powerful reaction of an audience to a word or phrase. Look, folks, if by now you're gathering the sense that I'm committed to science-based education, okay? Science-based education is essential to affect change, then you are not wrong, okay? Because that's where my head is. I've served as a principal investigator for over 500 clinical trials. I've served as a contributing author to over 250 publications in PubMed, peer-reviewed publications. I would say I have a high-level understanding of enzymatic parkways and intermediary magnetism. What? I'm sorry, what? Did I just say high-level understanding of enzymatic parkways and intermediary magnetism? It's not right. That's ridiculous. No, that's not what I meant. What I really meant to say is that was totally wrong. What I really meant to say is that I have a high-level understanding of gyros, bruschetta, and quinoa. Okay, that's the kind of level of high-level understanding I have of nutrition. Gyros, bruschetta, and quinoa. Okay, and it's for this reason that, as I mentioned, right at the beginning here, we do so much travel. I go to so many meetings. I try to get educated. Again, try to be better clinician every day. Learn the science, be exposed to the science and such. It's the reason I hung out so much in airports. To me, folks, the airport gates, they're cathedrals, okay, or they should be cathedrals, and they should be respected as such. I was sitting in the gate one time, and there are other people around me, and there was this woman on the other side, and she was on a business call, and she is just like screaming. It sounded like she was screaming. She probably didn't think she was screaming. She was very loud. And it was just echoing through the airport terminal. And she was talking about some, pretty interesting stuff to another person. I don't think the other person knew she was talking around other people. And the big thing is she was emphasizing that it was better to go through her than a bigger company for whatever business she was in because of her adherence to confidentiality, which I found that to be just fascinating. She was like, okay, Dr. Kalesh, just to double check, you're Your income last year was $232,000, and your dental records show you have a filling, there in your left molar, and your children get off at the school bus at the corner of Walnut and Oak at 7 a.m. every morning. Is that true? I just want to confirm this. And again, I just want to emphasize how much I appreciate your business and how much I keep things in confidence. Okay, because confidentiality is what I'm really good at. And look, I understand because I travel so much that, people don't look at airports like I do, and not everybody believes that the airport gate or terminal is a monastery or whatever, but I believe it's a sanctuary. I do. And if I'm there waiting to get on a plane or whatever, it is annoying to me, and maybe it shouldn't be, but it is annoying to me when you have parents there, they're just letting their kids just run wild. And they're not even trying to calm them down or discipline them or whatever, and they're just running wild throughout the airport, just screaming and yelling. And look, I appreciate kids. I've got kids of my own, but yelling and screaming and bumping into people and all that other kind of stuff, I don't know. That can get on your nerves after a while. I remember this kid I have a 3 bump rule. Like if I get bumped a third time by a screaming child whose parents are just oblivious to what their child is doing, I will point them to the exit door. Okay, the exit door where it's got all these potentially flashing red lights all around the door and such, and I will tell the child, I'll say, "Hey, Elijah, is your name Elijah? Okay, Elijah, you see that door over there? It says exit. You know what exit means, don't you? It means candy. Exit is Latin for candy. So if you'll just go through that door, the one that says exit, you will get lots of candy." And while it's unfortunate that it would set off the alarm and the security would whisk off the child and their family to an undisclosed room and such, and they'd probably miss their flight, and that is unfortunate. But the good news is the remainder of us would have 30 minutes of peace and quiet while we're trying to board the doggone airplane. Another annoyance is, of course, the Mr. Businessman. He's got to talk on his cell phone way too loud and talk about all this kind of his big business plans, his big business meetings and such. And many times he's got the Bluetooth where you can't even see that he's talking on the phone. He's just talking in the air, and you don't really know what he's doing. You don't even know if he's talking to you. And many times he's got the sclera that's exposed on the top of his eyes, and he's kind of scary. He's got his head, kind of tilted back, and again got the whites of his eyes, totally oblivious to his surroundings, shouting out the most private matters. I'm like, hey pal, look around. You don't see other people here? We don't need to hear about your quarterly earnings. We don't need to hear about how your customers are unreasonable jerks. We don't need to hear about how your colleague Karen is really an annoying sycophant. We don't need to hear any of these things, okay? And this wide-eyed mercenary, deranged mercenary look has got us all a little concerned, okay? A little concerned. So it would make us a whole lot more comfortable if you would just hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. Motif, recurrent symbol, statement, concept, or image. Onomatopoeia, words that sound like their meaning. Oxymoron, connection of contradictory words. Paradox, illogical contradictory premise that occur simultaneously and reveal a hidden truth. Personification, attributing human attributes to a non-person thing or situation. So yet again, I'm going to go back to what's been hopefully a recurrent theme, is that it all comes back to personal choice and personal accountability. When I say accountability, I'm not talking about blame. I'm talking about accountability. I'm not talking about blame, okay? And one of the ways that I think we can help our patients kind of reach that point where they are going to have a willingness to change is to talk with them instead of at them. We need to get back to basics and learn how to communicate better with our patients, convey understandable messages, and sometimes maybe talk their language instead of our language. Like we have all these kinds of words that are in prescribing information. Do you think the patients know what they mean? Many clinicians don't know what they mean. For example, the term eructation. I was given a talk 2 weeks ago, and I talked about this drug. One of the side effects was eructation. I see if they know what that means. And they say, yeah, it's men who have performance issues. Like, what? So what are you talking about? Yeah, they got problems with their erections. I'm like, no. That is not what it means. Okay, erections mean burp. Erections mean burping. That's what it means. Folks, if healthcare providers don't even know these terms, I mean, our patients don't have a chance, right? Here's one we use. I mean, we assume everybody knows what fatigue is. Fatigue is, but a lot of them maybe don't. And a lot of our patients will describe it in a way that I think is way more descriptive. You say, well, how you doing today? How's it going? You've been feeling all right? And the patient goes, nah, I've been feeling kind of bleh. Bleh. B-L-E-H. Bleh. Folks, that's a great word. I mean, what a better descriptor of how patients feel than bleh. Okay, great word. Here's another one. Upper respiratory tract infection. How many of our patients really know what we're talking about when we say, well, you appear to have a upper respiratory tract infection? Is that helpful? I think we should go with what the patients say. Okay, a patient comes in. I mean, wonder if instead of saying upper respiratory tract infection, you would use a word that you would hear from our patients. It's like, well, Mr. Jones, I am diagnosing you as having the crud. I got the crud? Yeah, you got the crud. That's what you got. Okay, that is meaningful to many of our patients. Instead of upper respiratory tract infection, diagnosing them as having the crud. And there's another one. I mean, it really didn't fit in very much with what I'm talking about, but just a pet peeve of mine. And look, whenever we describe people from Latin America and such, it's okay to call people Latinos. That's okay. You can say Latinos. You're giving a presentation, you say, this occurred in 70% of whites, and this occurred in 20% of blacks, and this occurred in 5% of Latinos. That's okay. It is not necessary that you take the word Latino and try to pronounce it in a way that you think is Spanish. Okay? You don't have to say Latino. It's not like you say, well, this occurred in 70% of whites, and 20% of blacks, and 5% of Latino. And I hear a lot of folks do that. And I guess if you really speak Spanish, then that's okay. But if you're just saying that so you can just pretend like people think that you speak Spanish, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Okay? Or maybe you think people look at you and go, oh, wait a minute. I wasn't for sure if he was in the Hispanic club. Now that he said the word Latino and did it in a Latino accent, Latino, then he's in the club. Okay, he's in our club. Okay, is he from Paraguay? You think he knew Che Guevara at some point in his life? Because no, don't need to do that. Okay. The essential point is that words do matter. I had words and actions do matter. I had a patient that when I was in training came into the emergency room and would periodically come in the emergency room because he had ventricular tachycardia. And they would have to cardiovert him there in the emergency room before he would go up into the coronary care unit. And I was helping manage his case. And I went to him and I was like, how's it going and everything? And he said, look, I appreciate all you folks do for me. But I got to tell you, no matter how many times I go in the emergency room, how many times they electroshock me, I just can't seem to get used to it. And I was like, man, we got to save this guy. This guy's my hero. Okay, he was apologizing to me. Okay, I was like, got to save this man. So that's on the positive side. On the negative side, we had a patient once in the office who coded. Okay, so they weren't breathing, didn't have a heartbeat, they were in a coma. And so I wanted to move them immediately to the intensive care unit. And so as one of my staff members is performing CPR in the exam room, I'm calling to try to get this patient admitted to the intensive care unit. And the person on the phone asked if I had a managed emergency treatment plan. It's like, what are you talking about? They said, well, before we can admit him to the intensive care unit, we need to have a managed emergency treatment plan to see if we can grant permission for this person to go into the intensive care unit. I was like, okay, I got to go with it. And I said, so you're wanting to know my treatment plan, the treatment plan that I hope to accomplish. And they go, yeah, we need to know that. Okay. Here's what I hope to accomplish. This is my treatment plan. I would like to get the patient to start breathing. I would like to get this patient to have a heartbeat. And if I have time, I would like to do something about this whole coma situation. So if I could accomplish those three things, that would be essential components of my managed emergency treatment plan. The point is, folks, sometimes we just need to get back to simple language. Okay, simple language. I do a lot of publication, and a quote I like to tell people, something I came up with, is that anybody can write a complicated paper, only a genius can understand. But it takes genius to write a complicated paper that anyone could understand. And I think that's right. I think we need to get back to simple messages that people, that results in effective communication. There's communication, there's effective communication, and sometimes the best form of communication is to not say anything at all. Not say anything at all. Here's another quote I like to tell people. I have found that when you have 1,000,000 things to say, that is often the best time to say nothing at all. Say nothing at all. Because sometimes the situation just shouts and screams for you to just be quiet. Just be quiet. You don't have to respond to everything. Sometimes the most effective communication is to say nothing. Point of view. Narrator persons such as I, first person, you, second person, or they, third person. Polyscendenton, repetitive use of a conjunction, such as and. Repetition, use of the same word or phrase one after another. Satire, humorous exploration of a person or society. Segue, connection between individual segments of performances. One of the advantages of having simple messages, one of the advantages of being consistent, is it helps combat the gravitation of our patients towards skepticism. So if you find that you are practicing medicine or giving advice that's sort of outside the mainstream, then disclose it. Okay, disclose it. Then your patients can choose to see you or not. Say, for example, here's a disclosure. I am talking to you, right? I am talking to you, but am I really? Because in fact, what I'm really doing is I'm really sitting in a chair and looking into a camera. In actuality, I am in my office and I am talking to a microphone and I'm not really talking to you. And this is not really a discussion, right? So that would be an example of a disclosure. But as I stated before, just because you can disclose something doesn't mean you have to disclose something. Sometimes silence best move forward. I was giving a talk in Mobile, Alabama, and this woman was driving me in from the airport. And as we are driving from the airport to the hotel, I saw this woman. She had this writing on a piece of cardboard that said, I am homeless. My husband died of cancer. I have 3 kids. Need food. And look, folks, years ago, I worked as a volunteer to provide medical care for the homeless. So I do have a perspective on homelessness. I mean, I used to tell people, you give me broad spectrum antibiotics, combination antifungal and steroid cream and some white socks, and I can do a lot of things for homeless folks, okay? But nonetheless, here we're driving in from the airport, and I saw the woman with the sign, and I said, boy, that's just really tragic. And the very nice driver woman responded and says, oh, yes. That's Sheila. She lives down the block from me, and she has the nicest foyer. I said, what? It was sort of an unexpected reply. And she goes, oh, yes. Her husband and she have worked so hard to afford that foyer. And I said, so she's not homeless? And she goes, oh, no. But she does have a really nice foyer. And I said, so her husband didn't die from cancer? He goes, no. He works at the tackle bait store across town. But again, she has the nicest foyer. And I said, so she doesn't need food for 3 kids? And she says, no. She needed money to finish up that foyer because, she has such a nice, she wanted such a nice foyer. So now I'm in a dilemma because, I don't know this driver and I don't know Sheila. I don't know what's going on. I don't know the social dynamics there. And as much as I ethically objected to Sheila impersonating a homeless person for home refurbishment, my opinion and indignation really wasn't going to matter very much. So it seemed to me if I was going to pass judgment on Sheila and her husband and everything, that would be a bit disrespectful and insensitive to the driver, who was clearly enamored about Sheila's foyer. So, I thought about it, and we had another 20 minutes to go to the hotel. Having nothing else to contribute, I finally said, I'm just going for it. So I looked at the driver, she's looking at me in the rearview mirror there, and I looked at her and I said, so Sheila, foyer's really nice? Is that what you're telling me? And she goes, oh, yes, it is. She has the nicest foyer. So we talked about Sheila's foyer for the remainder part of the drive. The point is that self-disclosure and sensitivity to others can often improve communications. Simile, description of the similarity of objects by using words such as like. Soliloquy, speaking thoughts aloud to oneself. Symbolism, use of an object to reflect an abstract concept. Synecdoche, use of a part to represent the whole. Tautology, saying the same thing twice using different words. One of the things for which we should not lose sight is the fact that in many ways we are so alike. People are just people. They're just folks. And we're more alike than we're different. I mean, look, I understand we should celebrate our differences, but that doesn't mean we can't appreciate our common bonds, how much that we are similar to one another. I was in Las Vegas, and this young woman came up to me. She was wearing a sequin dress, which is not anything I would have worn, but again, we're celebrating differences here, And so I asked her, I said, what do you do for a living? And she had this enduring blush, and she says, well, I'm a working girl. And I was like, hey, I work all the time too. Okay, we're just alike. You're a working girl. I'm a working guy. I work all the time. I work weekends, holidays. I just work all the time. And as I look back up in this, intriguing conversation, somehow she had gotten lost in the crowd. And I don't know. I'm not exactly sure I lost her. She dispersed into the surrounding people there. Not exactly sure how that happened. Note to self, Harold, you really need to work on your people skills. Noted. The point is this. Work is life. At least it is to me. Work is life. Good works make for an enjoyable life. Good choices promote good outcomes. Investment will likely pay returns in the future, whether it be work or life. And so that's the reason this series of YouTube videos examines the science of stand-up. As I mentioned in other videos, just as there is need for a time investment in stand-up comedy, there's also a need for work investment. And this can be challenging because special a special issue arises when you get countless comics who they desperately want to be funny, but they're never going to be funny because they're just not. And they tragically spend endless amounts investing in themselves and their art and such. And they do so with the mistaken belief that someday someone will finally acknowledge the brilliant house that they built, okay? And as opposed to people whispering, wow, quite the money pit you dug there with your career and such, your so-called comedy career. It's just very tragic and very sad. Very tragic and very sad. And it's the kind of sadness that, in my experience, that I have witnessed, what I think, in my opinion, represents silent desperation, day after day, consecutively, one right after another. Mimesis, interjecting word within a word. Tone, setting emotional state of the audience via words, pacing, and volume. Tragic comedy, integration of tragedy with comedy. Vignette, short story or scene. Zoomorphism, assigning animal traits to an object. But not everything is doom and gloom. I mean, look, some comics obviously do make it big. They do very well. They get that ultimate stage. They get the limelight. And all this work and time that they invested all seems to pay off. But too many times, folks, I've seen it. All the time that they invest in their work and in their craft, they don't take the time or make the same amount of effort towards their health. And that's the reason you see so many comics who have died. I don't mean just gotten sick, but died in their 30s and their 40s. I mean, yeah, they made a career, but whoopee freaking do. I mean, they're not on the planet anymore. And that can be really tough. I mean, what have you accomplished when you're not here for audience to see you, or you're not here for your family or your friends? I worked with a headliner once who suffered from the disease of obesity, as well as a lot of unfavorable life choices. And it got to be so bad that he could no longer stand on the stage at the club. So they had to get this special chair. It didn't have any arms. It was this big red plastic hand, okay, big red plastic hand and such that they would put on the stage because that's the only way he could sit and do his act. And he was one of the most successful comics of his time, and he would end up dying at age 45. So OJ was headlining the show where I was either an opener or a middle, I don't remember. And as I was walking up the stairs to the green room, one of the comedy club staffers was running down the steps from the green room and almost knocked me over. I said, "What's up?" And they said, "Well, there's a man up there. He's short of breath and he's blue, and I don't want to be there when he dies." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." At that time I was a young physician. I was enthusiastic. I had moonlighted a bunch of emergency rooms, so I thought I was going to be able to save the day. And I get to the green room, and here we have OJ up there. He's sitting on a couch, chain smoking cigarettes, had 2 big sacks of fast food, and was washing it down with a big pint of Jack Daniels. And this was within an hour before he was to hit the stage. So the staff member was right. He could hardly breathe. And maybe he had a cold. Maybe that was part of it or whatever. His face did have that dusky blue hue to it. And at that point I said, as a clinician and as a friend, I mean, what's my obligation here? What I'm going to do? And so I thought about saying, well, all the cigarettes that you're smoking and all the Jack Daniels that you're drinking and the sacks of fast food, these are unhealthful. I thought about doing that, but then I also remembered the first step before making change is they've got to want to make change. They got to be ready to change. And anything other than that, I mean, you've just kind of lost credibility. So he didn't need any acute care at that time. So my response was, hey, OJ, how's it going? Feeling good tonight? I mean, I just thought it was best being a friend at that point. That seemed like the most compassionate thing to do. I'm not entirely clear that was the best path forward, but I still don't know what I would do if I had to do it over. And a few months later, he would die. He would die. So this brings to mind the question I think a lot of our patients ask is, why do the things most associated with living life end up ending it? Don't know. It's often said that the last words of the Shakespearean actor Edmund Kean was, dying is easy, comedy is hard. And stand-up comedy is hard. The science of stand-up is hard. That's the reason we have these series of YouTube videos. Because of its provocative nature, you always run the risk of ruffling somebody's feathers. And for many, taking time to master the intricacies and devices of stand-up is not for them, barking up the wrong tree. But for others who really want to get engaged and put in the time, put in the effort, it's the bee's knees. Okay, it's the learning these literary devices and these comedic devices can really add color to any comedy routine. And I think that's so essential for success. So for me, I find that the understanding and the application and the implementation of the myriad of literary devices have really helped me when I did the stand-up comic, and also help validate how stand-up comedy truly is the personification of science.